This is Bill Hammerstrom for WJER. I'm here interviewing Bob Baker of New Philadelphia. Bob, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
I'm Bob Baker, and there are a lot of Bob Bakers. And I've always lived here, either in New Philly or Dover.
What is your birthday?
7/20/24.
So you'll be 100 years old in
Yes,
a couple months.
I hope so.
Well, happy birthday. So maybe you could start by telling me where you were born and where you grew up. A little bit about growing up.
Okay, I was born outside of New Philly on Old Route 21. There's a place called Stringtown, and it's just a string of houses, and that's where I was born. And at that time, we had no electricity, no water in the house, and a few other things that we didn't have. But the REA, when Roosevelt came in, helped so many people, and we got electricity when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And I went to a two-room schoolhouse about a mile from home toward Stone Creek. And it was two rooms, each room had 4 grades in it. So I went 8 years there, and then was bused to New Philly as a high school student.
What year did you graduate from?
1942. And that was the year I told you that everything happened. I hit 18 after I graduated, and I was eligible to go to work for a factory. And of course, someone I knew was driving there, and at that time you had extra gas allotted if you picked up a certain number of people and took them to work, and that's the way I got to Canton.
And you told me you met your sweetheart then, right?
I met my sweetheart when I was 15 years old. She went to Dover High, and that was a chance meeting. I could rattle on about that, but anyway, we were very close, and our families were of the same religion and practically the same stratus as far as income and so forth. And so we planned to get married when we had graduated from high school, because we had been together a long time and got along real well. And
so you graduated from high school, you got married, and you had a job. And then what happened?
And then I had a job a little later with the government.
You said you got your draft notice? You got your draft notice after you got engaged?
Yeah, I got it in December, and we were married in October.
So what happened next then?
Well, I was inducted into the Army, and at that time, like I say, they needed boots on the ground. So after I volunteered for the Navy and some other things, I got in the infantry like everybody else. And so I slept with a rifle for 3 years. And I brag a little bit about it. At age 20, I was a platoon sergeant in the infantry, and I mean the old infantry, where we even had bayonet practice. That's the only time I ever really disliked somebody a lot. And I used to, when I made the thrust with the bayonet at that bale of hay, I used to think of our first sergeant. But I have had a great life.
Where did you train? Where did you first report?
I reported to Camp Swift, Texas. It wasn't Swift. When I walked in the barracks, up above was a sign painted, "Kill or be killed." And I hadn't really given any thought to either one at my age. And then I went to Louisiana, and we trained officers by sleeping on the ground for a winter, a whole winter. And I could go on. Went on to Missouri, and at a camp there, and I helped train some replacements we were sending out, and then we were getting people who I don't know if you knew ASTP, which if I don't know who you had to know, but you were going to college under the Army, and the
Did you say you were initially training to go to Japan?
we were trained right, and that's we went to San Diego and trained with these. You've seen, they call them VPs. The boat, the front end flops down when you get in shallow water, but you climb down the net from the big ship, and did that intensely for 3 weeks. And that's right after that is when we found out we were going to Europe.
So what was your unit, your company? Do you remember that?
My company was A company. My platoon was 1st Platoon, 387th Regiment, 97th Division.
Got it all right there.
That was our symbol.
Okay.
And this is where we went. We landed at Le Havre, and I was in a little town on the Czech border when the war was over. And the little town was named Katrina. Have a little story about that. The last day of the war, some of the Czech soldiers found our uniforms and come across to meet us right across the border. And that's the first time I was ever on a motorcycle, and the last time. And anyway, we were on a hillside, and I see these people coming on this road past us. And they were old people, children, ladies, pushing carts, refugees. So I finally went down and said, "Why are you moving? The war's over." They said, "The Russians are going to occupy where we are."
So what do you remember about first when you left the United States to go to Europe? Where did you leave from? What do you remember about leaving?
Well, we left from the West Coast, from the East Coast. I think we were only there a day or two and got on a ship. We had come from Missouri, and it was a harbor in Massachusetts. I don't remember much about it. My memory is not exactly.
Well, you're talking about 80 years ago, so it's a...
Yeah. And they named the camps that people moved into after cigarettes. Ours was Lucky Strike.
So where did you land in Europe?
Oh, Le Havre.
And what do you remember about that, about arriving there the first time?
Well, we were there for about a day and a half, I think is all. And of course you carried everything you owned. And then we got on a troop train, and I forget where we went first, but we started on the move. Well, here, this is Le Havre, or is this where we started? This is where we started. That's where we ended.
So, can you talk about your first few days making your way across France there?
We were in France, yes.
And can you talk about how you made your way across France? What happened in that time with your...
Well, France was had been occupied, and the Germans were gone from France. They were on the move. Actually, it was a delaying action. They had learned some pretty good. They converted some of their aircraft guns to field artillery, and they were pretty darned accurate with those things. And I remember one day I started to dig 5 foxholes because they were moving and they had these guns on us, and we kept moving.
Were there any battles that you were a part of in France?
Nothing big. In fact, sometimes I acted as liaison for the company, went forward to find out where we could be and where the resistance was. And I had a German-speaking Jeep driver that carried me around.
Could you describe the resistance that you encountered in France?
Pardon?
Can you describe the resistance that you encountered?
Yeah, mostly it was artillery and machine guns, and some of it was pretty accurate. And of course, they had time to prepare, and we were under fire a lot, but it didn't last at one place very long, because, like I say, I could tell you a little story that I thought of. I was a pretty good marksman with my rifle. And in 1914, and you've heard of this, on Christmas Day, we were not, of course, in the army, or in war then. And the Germans and the English got together and traded gifts and even played games. And I often thought, when I sighted down my rifle, do I want to kill this guy? You know?
Yeah.
You didn't have a choice, and people think you're thinking about what you're doing for America, but what you're trying to do is kill and survive.
Did you face that a lot in that time in France?
Actually, yes, because we run onto a lot of dug-in machine guns emplacements, and once you found them, you had to figure out a way to get to them and eliminate them, and that was a lot of fire, a lot of firing. I had an artillery show once in a tank that was 50 yards from me, and the people in the tank, they sort of lived in them because we were moving so fast. and they had their barracks bags with all they owned tied to the outside of the tank. And I'm sort of ahead in a little brook as cover and down in, and the tank is here, and a shell comes through and hits the barracks bag and knocks it off the tank. And the company commander yelled at me, "Get back here, Baker." Oh boy.
Did your group suffer casualties going
Oh
through
yes. In fact, there's the division casualties.
Wow.
So we were in, we were in danger a lot.
You were in the mess. So you made your way through France and then into Germany?
Yes, we were in Germany most of the time when the firefight. And geez, what destruction. What a waste of war. And the Germans, well, my ancestry is Swiss and German, and not too far back. And the Germans lived much as we did. And I'll tell you a little incident. I was in a house with a man, and he had 2 daughters. And he said, "Would you like him to sing for you?"
And what did you say?
They sang.
Do you remember what they sang?
Yes. It starts underneath by the barricade. Lily Marlene is what they sang.
Okay. Was that in Germany? Was that Germany?
Yes.
So what was the experience like in Germany when you got from France into Germany?
Pardon?
What was the experience when you got into Germany from France? How was that different than?
Well, there was more resistance, of course, and the people. I'll tell you, when you got away from the cities, they lived just about like we did, and the only guy that was a Nazi was the next door neighbor, and we went through that. But the homes were similar to what we have, and the schools. I remember one place I sort of interviewed a school principal, and it was out way away from the cities.
So what did you see in the cities?
Rubble. Oh, some places there was nothing standing. We had bombed flat.
Wow.
And you wonder where the people were. And we one concentration camp, we liberated, and oh God, the people, and well, it wasn't concentration camp. It was an army jail sort of, and it shows how people can be convinced, especially trying to eliminate a whole race of all the Jews in the world, and they were in depression, and it was much easier to steal something or take somebody's property than it was trying to find some of your own.
So can you go back to coming across that, I guess, army prison?
Pardon?
When you came across the prison or for the army, how did you get to there, and what did you do when you got there?
Well, they had been the cells had been opened, and the only thing we did was feed them and get them transportation to the rear, and of course a lot of them needed medical attention, and saw that they got that, and they were a sad bunch. You know, they were ill-fed and ill taken care of, and oh boy.
How did they react when they saw you?
Oh, how would you react?
Can you describe it? Can you describe their reaction?
Oh, it was, they ran to us for one thing, and they were so glad to see somebody that wasn't going to torture them or anything else. They were happy for the first time in many, many months.
And then where was that in Germany? Do you remember where?
No. I'll tell you, I went through too many towns.
How long were you in Germany for? Do you remember?
Probably 2 months.
So 2 months, that seems like a long time. Was every day like a battle, or how did you get by every day?
Well, some days it was just moving, and finding where the resistance was, and I was sort of, I told you I was sort of ahead trying to find these places. I found a bombed out dairy one time. Well, I found rooms for the officers, but I didn't realize that the milk was sour. Got hell for that.
Was that a dangerous position for you to be out ahead?
Usually we were very careful, but yes, because a jeep and a guy in the jeep couldn't do much. And I remember one time they had what they called the Volkstrom, which was old people, 50, and they had sort of ragtag uniforms. And there was, right near the end of the war, I was in a town with, I think, 2 or 3 other people, and this must have been 20 of them were running toward me, and I fired, and I was so glad I missed everybody. Hell, they were trying to surrender.
So you have a list of names here. Do you remember those soldiers? Do you remember some of them who have
I
passed away, who were
I
killed?
had a list of our companies. Oh boy.
We had this list of
Yeah,
names.
but hell, I can't read them. Our company had, I think, 6 fatalities, and wounded, I don't know. I remember 3 or 4 of them that, but I was away from the company part of the time, and we didn't. I think fatalities, I think we only had about 6 or 7 in our company.
Were you involved in any named battles that people would be aware of?
Not really. I mean, they were so scattered, and no.
Can you?
Well, all they wanted to do was make sure that there was no more resistance. And that was happening.
Did you get hit, or were you injured at all?
No, I was very lucky. God has been good to me. I write religious tracts and send them out, and I have been, I call myself a stationary missionary. I've had no training, and but I've had a few things that were actually miracles, and
In your life since, or when you were serving?
Pardon?
Miracles in your life since you served, or miracles while you were serving during the war?
Oh, after you do a little praying and when they're shooting at you, but I was, after I came home, I was very active in St. John's and went through all of the things of the president of the congregation, and I got into that through the Boy Scouts, really, and I wasn't a Boy Scout, but my son was, and I went into the office one day, and at that time they had one secretary, and I told her I was an accountant. I had taken accounting in a small school for a year and a half under the GI Bill, and so she said, "You should run for treasurer." Well, I didn't make it. Of course, nobody wanted it. And she was the treasurer, and she did all the work anyway. But she talked me into being treasurer, and I don't think anybody thought about voting anybody else. And from there on, I went right through all the. I was never a man that took care of the property, but I was everything else, and that doesn't have a heck of a lot to do with anything. I've got. I had a daughter-in-law who had one of these books written, where they ask you different questions, and I've got my whole life in that book.
Wow.
And I've just had a real good life. I've got a family. I've had two great wives. My first wife died of lung cancer when we were married 43 years. My next wife was a widow, for her husband died at 58 years old, and she was beautiful, both of them beautiful from the inside out, and we were married 30 years. I'm an experienced husband.
Absolutely.
and she passed away when she was 94, and I've just, both families get along, and I still have, I'm the grandfather to her mother and father. To her mother and father's children.
Right.
They live in London, England, and I got to travel all over Europe, and then I did some duty. I was trained to make, I think I told you, to make diversionary raids on Japan when the Army doesn't know what to do when there's a change. And they took me out of Europe, zipped me to California, had me gone on the boat to Japan. I got to Seattle, Japan surrendered. They put me on the boat anyway. So I did 4 months occupation duty in Japan.
Wow. Do you want to talk about when you were in Europe, learning about the end of the war? Can you talk about how you found out that the war had ended and where you were and what you did then?
Yes, I was just on the border of Czechoslovakia, and the war ended there. And what else did you ask me?
How did you find out?
They had huge speaker trucks going all over Der Krieg is raus. And of course I traveled pretty fast, you know, and we were at this little town called Katrina, and that's where I saw these people leaving Czechoslovakia, and of course we were happy, but we got taken out of there and sent to France, given 30 days leave. I went to Seattle.
Went to Seattle from France?
Huh?
Where did you go?
Seattle, Washington.
That's pretty far away from France.
Yeah. We were known as the most traveled division in the Army. We went to Europe and back and Japan and back, and had been across. Actually, I'd been across our United States 3 times, and spent a lot of time traveling.
What was it like that 30 days that you had of leave?
Well, first of all, it was almost like a honeymoon, and we went to a lake in southwestern Ohio, and I forget the name of it, and we're there, and of course we visited everybody, and we had a great time, and but 30 days were over, and that's when we headed for the West Coast.
Was it difficult to put everything that you saw and the horrors that you experienced, was it difficult to put that behind you and become a civilian again?
Yes. I had great families and no difficulties in the marriage. My children, I had a boy and a girl, and they were both fine. And later on, I think I got home in 46, and my daughter was born about 3 years later, and in fact I was in school, and my son about must have been 7 years later, and so it actually no, I didn't have any trouble. I had God, and I talked to him a lot, still do. When you live alone, I've been living alone now 3.5 years, almost 4. 4 years. I've been living alone 4 years. And we lived on my second wife and I lived on up on the hill on the golf course,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived there 30 years, and then I moved. We had four bedrooms and 3.5 baths up there because her mother and father lived in England. He was an international attorney, and when they come to visit, we needed extra bedrooms, so we built over the garage a bath and 2 bedrooms.
Do you think about the war much in your experience? Does it still
No.
linger? No?
No. I'll tell you, the part I think about is the sad part. The things that didn't need to be done. And the saddest thing I ever read was that Christmas thing. I thought how those people must feel the next day. And I think of the waste and the people who gave their lives for nothing, and right now I feel so sorry for Vietnam people and those people over in that area. Oh God, I knew why I was in Europe, and I didn't mind. But those people didn't know what the hell were we here for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you, when you first got drafted into the Army, were you nervous and scared, or were you accepting of your duty?
Well, I think I accepted it, and luckily my wife then came to visit me in Texas. We had one room and in a home, and the Red Cross was great. They would be there to meet, and the railroads had one car reserved for wives and girlfriends of Army people or service people, and they took care of them, and they went to the dining car separately, and the Red Cross had rooms that were available when they got off, and they were great. And so my wife visited me. The only time we had was a little bit on the weekend, and when I went to California, she was in California twice. I was in Southern California, and then Camp Cook a little north, and so actually, and she came to visit me in Missouri. So she came to visit me 4 times, and for a girl that had never been much out of Dover, that was a brave thing.
You said you went back to Europe. What was that like? Did you go through Germany and France? And
my second wife, Betty Lou, her family would travel, and they took us. We lived in Italy for a couple of weeks out in the country, and the people were great. And I got to see the Louvre and the Belgium, and a lot of Germany, and I was fortunate. We did a lot of traveling, and I got so I even knew the routes of the subways in London, and went to every museum there. And
was it strange at all, considering when you were in Europe before, you were fighting in a war, and now you're there in Germany and you're sightseeing? Did that mean anything to you?
Yes, there's still a lot of cities were still showing piles of brick, and but they recovered, and that was a long time afterwards.
When people ask you about your experience in World War II, what do you tell them? What do you say about it if you kind of sum it up?
Well, I was fortunate for one thing, and I didn't have to spend. I was lucky. A lot of the men in our original company were sent to Europe, and I was a good enough soldier that they kept me to train some more, and I didn't have anything special other than I did what they told me to do, and I was just fortunate. I made it through great. I'm one of the very lucky ones, and I'm not much of I'm no hero. I'm not Sergeant York, and I probably the worst thing I ever did was, I come close to lots of bullets. One went through my pants leg one time. That was as close as I think I had come. And I had a lot of experience with ducking things, I guess you call it. And the fact I actually was spent time out of the United States probably less than a year, and it took 3 weeks for him to get me from Seattle to Japan because they didn't know where to land us.
Well, what was Japan like? Was that?
Oh, are you aware of Kent and the armory they have there?
Yeah.
Okay. Our company replaced the soldiers that were guarding that. Well, you can imagine they were pretty old, but there was a barracks there and a headquarters, and my job was every other day I went back into the mountains to make sure they were making shovels and had quit making shells. And this factory we were at had a lot of these bunkers where they stored stuff. And what they did was they filled silk cylinders that were treated with certain amount of powder, I guess you'd call it, for ammunition for cannon type things. And my job was get in the Jeep and go back. These people even threw a Christmas party for me that I called on. What could they do, you know? And they said, "Now, would you like a virgin?" No, thanks. And I saw them at a silk factory where they were still using some kind of steam power, and I met a man who supervised a potash mine back in the hills, and he was an American, and he said I haven't spoken English for years. And he and I said, what do you miss? He said, pipe tobacco. So I got him pipe tobacco. But I was only there 4 months and didn't have anybody shooting at me.
So a better experience in Japan than Germany.
Yeah.
Well, 80 years now since that's been.
Pardon?
I said it's been 80 years now since World War II ended, and it sounds like you have lived a full, blessed life since then.
I have. It's been blessed. I have, and I'm a very happy man. And I can say this, and then I'll shut up. That Christ talked a lot, or the Bible talks a lot about forgiveness. That's one of the. I cannot remember anyone that I have to forgive. Anyone. Even though I thought mean thoughts about my first sergeant. I got over that. We changed, his name was Petrosky. I think he was a Russian. But can you imagine bayonet practice? And I often thought, hey, if I'm that close to a guy, I'm going to pull the trigger.
Were you ever that close to a guy?
Never.
Never.
No. And I don't think I could have killed somebody that I was looking straight at. I don't know.
It's good you didn't have to find out.
No. And I'm taking a lot of your time and telling you nothing.
No, this is exactly what I'd hoped for. I'm so glad that you spoke to me.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Did you ever see one of these books?
I'm not sure. You're Robert Baker on here.
Yeah, and you know what? The old phone book had 6 Bob Bakers in it. One of them was a deadbeat because they used to call me.
Wow. That's very interesting.
And I've got some of my philosophy in the back on religion. But I thought I'd give them a chance. But this was pretty much my life.
Yeah.
And so she arranged for it, and I gave, or she gave, each one of my children and her children a copy of it, and that's all you need. Well, that goes from my birth to the president.
Well, let's wrap up our interview. I'm just going to say you're Bob Baker, and I'm Bill Hammerstrom, and thank you for talking to us.
I'm sorry.
I'm Bill Hammerstrom, and you're Bob Baker, and
Yes.
Thank you for speaking to us.
Well, thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
You had to listen to a lot.